Good day, everybody. This is Yin Yang, 15 minutes late, and it is day number 1769. We are on Words and Wisdom Wednesday. I bring wisdom to you borrowed from people, from the editor, William J. Bennett, today. He collected an anthology of stories on virtues when we know the right thing to do in our life. That is a form of virtue. I mean, wisdom. Wisdom. When we perform on our wisdom, we are creating virtue. So I'm bringing wisdom from other people so that I can bring you their life experiences and we can learn wisdom. Then we can practice our wisdom, which becomes practicing virtue. Okay, so let me get a bookmark. And I'm going to explain why I'm late. I'm late because there are some fans in my house. And when they're on, I can't hear myself think. So it takes me a long time to get myself together. Hopefully, it'll be done. The flooding occurred in where I live in a 12-story building, and it is uh, very bad what they did. Somebody on the ninth floor flooded all the apartments all the way down to the ground floor. So there's a lot of damage in the building at the moment, and all that is a little stressful. Uh, well, we all know that. We all go through stresses. In fact, before I even start in the book, why don't I mention the idea that we can come out as people unified by blacking out economic GDP on November 25th through December 2nd. Write this down once again. From November 25th, which will be a Tuesday, to December 2nd, which is another Tuesday, we will be giving 8 days of blackout economic GDP. In other words, at work, we will do just the bare minimum to stay in our job, and we will take all the breaks necessary, all the breaks that we're entitled to. We're moving the GDP as slowly as we can. We're slowing it down. Do not go to restaurants that are chain restaurants. Do not go shopping. Do not buy anything online from anybody except the mom and pop stores, and get all your medicines ahead of time. We don't want a surge of, uh, this is from Mika Anderson on Substack. Mika is her first name. Anderson with an O is her last name. And she gave up a very great idea. She has a whole checklist of things that you can do before the blackout begins. And you need to stock up on everything that you will need to get by through those days. Enough food, enough uh, toilet paper, enough medicines, food, medicines, toilet paper. I can't think of anything else. Water, of course, and make sure that you're stocked up and you're ready to stay home and not spend your money anywhere except possibly at mom and pop restaurants, because we do want to keep them going. Uh, Mom and pop restaurants, mom and pop businesses, but we do want to move the GDP slowly. We want to stop the GDP actually, but we can only slow it down. The End of the Scott Expedition by Robert Falcon Scott. Now, William J. Bennett is saying, in 1910, Captain Robert Falcon Scott of the British Navy set sail on a second attempt to reach the South Pole. 2 years later, on January 18th, 1912, after a treacherous journey across vast stretches of ice-covered Antarctica, Scott and four companions reached their destination only to find that a rival expedition led by Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen, Roald Amundsen, Amundsen, had beaten them by 35 days. They found Amundsen's tent still uncovered by snow. Disheartened and exhausted, Scott and his party began their 700-mile homeward trek, a journey that would end in tragedy. Food and fuel ran low, temperatures plummeted, and frostbite worsened daily. On March 3rd, Scott wrote in his diary, God help us. We can't keep up this pulling, that is certain. Amongst ourselves, we are unendingly cheerful, but what each man feels in his heart, I can only guess. On March 16th, he wrote, assuredly, the end is not far. And finally, on March 29th, he wrote, it seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more. R. Scott, For God's sake, look after our people, end quote. Scott and two companions made it to within 15 miles of a supply camp. Months later, a search party found the bodies in their sleeping bags, half buried in snow. Among the records of the trip, they found this last message by Scott to the public, a farewell letter showing, as Scott wrote in an accompanying note, that, quote, Englishmen can still die with a bold spirit, fighting it out to the end quote. Now to the author. The causes of the disaster are due not to faulty organization, but to the misfortune in all risks which had to be undertaken. Number one, the loss of pony transport in March 1911 obliged me to start later than I had intended and obliged the limits of stuff transported to be narrowed. Two, the weather throughout the outward journey, and especially the long gale in 83 degrees S, stopped us. Now, 83 degrees S. Oh, south. I'm sorry. I thought it meant temperature, but it means longitude, latitude. Latitude. Number three, the soft snow in lower reaches of glacier again reduced pace. We fought these untoward events with a will and conquered, but it cut into our provision reserve. Excuse me. Now, I am reading from William J. Bennett's The Book of Virtues. He is the editor and collected a story on courage called The End of the Scott Expedition by Robert Falcon Scott. And we are borrowing wisdom from people because we need to gain courage, and we need to do this for the blackout that I mentioned earlier. We need to have some courage to stand up and speak out for our democracy in America, which is in jeopardy in the United States. Okay, now every detail, back to the author, Scott. Every detail of our food supplies, clothing, and depots made on the interior ice sheet and over that long stretch of 700 miles to the pole and back worked out to perfection. The advance party would have returned to the glacier in fine form and with surplus of food, but for the astonishing failure of the man whom we had least expected to fail. Edgar Evans was thought the strongest man of the party. The Beardmore Glacier is not difficult in fine weather, but on our return, we did not get a single completely fine day. This, with a sick companion, enormously increased our anxieties. As I have said elsewhere, we got into frightfully rough ice, and Edgar Evans received a concussion of the brain. He died a natural death, but left us a shaken party with the season unduly advanced. But all the facts above enumerated were as nothing to the surprise which awaited us on the barrier, capital B. I maintain that our arrangements for returning were quite adequate, and that no one in the world would have expected the temperatures and surfaces which we encountered at this time of the year. On the summit in latitude 85 degrees, 86 degrees, we had negative 20 degrees, negative 30 degrees. On the barrier in latitude 80 degrees, 10,000 feet lower, we had negative 30 degrees in the day, negative 47 degrees at night pretty regularly, with continuous headwind during our day marches. It is clear that these circumstances come on very suddenly, and our wreck is certainly due to this sudden advent of severe weather, which does not seem to have any satisfactory cause. I do not think human beings ever came through such a month as we have come through, and we should have got through in spite of the weather, but for the sickening of a second companion, Captain Oates, Oates, and a shortage of fuel in our depots for which I cannot account. And finally, but for the storm which has fallen on us within 11 miles of the depot at which we hoped to secure our final supplies. Surely misfortune could scarcely have exceeded this last blow. We arrived within 11 miles of our 1-ton camp, capital one, capital V, capital C, with fuel for one last meal and food for 2 days. For 4 days, we have been unable to leave the tent, the gale howling about us. We are weak. Writing is difficult, but for my own sake, I do not regret this journey, which has shown that Englishmen can endure hardships, help one another, and meet death with as great a fortitude as ever in the past. We took risks. We knew we took them. Things have come out against us, and therefore we have no cause for complaint, but bow to the will of Providence, capital P, determined still to do our best to the last. But if we have been writing, excuse me, but if we have been willing to give our lives to this enterprise, which is for the honor of our country, I appeal to our countrymen to see that those who depend on us are properly cared for. Had we lived, I should have had a tale to tell of the hardihood, endurance, and courage of my companions, which would have stirred the heart of every Englishman. These rough notes and our dead bodies must tell the tale, but surely, surely, a great rich country like ours will see that those who are dependent on us are properly provided for. R. Scott. Oh, well, wow. Let me make sure that I have enough time to read this one. I believe I do. The Iron Horse. The Iron Horse by Bob Considine, Considine. William J. Bennett says, Lou Gehrig, who lived from 1903 to 1941, played a record 2,130 consecutive ball games for the New York Yankees from June 1st, 1925 to May 2nd, 1939, earning the nickname the Iron Horse. The power-hitting first baseman hit .300 or better for 12 straight seasons, batted in 100 or more runs for 13 consecutive years, and hit 493 home runs. The form of spine paralysis that ended his career and eventually his life has come to be known as Lou Gehrig's disease, not just because of the publicity surrounding his sickness, but because of the remarkable courage with which he faced the end. Spine paralysis. The Yanks won. Okay, the author, Bob Considine, says, and we're reading The Iron Horse out of the Book of Virtues, compiled by William J. Bennett, because we are going to learn more about the wisdom that has kept other people going, including courage, which is one of the virtues. And we are going to learn about what they have done in the face of this kind of thing. The Yanks won easily in 1938, Lou's 15th year with the ball team. They went on to demolish the Chicago Cubs in the World Series, but Lou's contribution was modest. During the regular season, he hit 295, a highly acceptable figure in today's baseball, but a source of great embarrassment for Gehrig in 1938. It was the first time he had hit under 300 since joining the team. Dim- Dimage had beat him in home run production the year before. Lou played through the series against the Cubs, but the 4 hits he got in 14 times at bat were all singles. The first hint I had that Lou's problem was more sinister than a routine slump that year was provided by a wild and woolly Washington pitcher named Joe Krakauskas. Krakauskas. Sorry about that, guys. Sorry about that. Are we back? Good. Okay. The first hint I had that Lou's problem was more sinister than a routine slump that year was provided by a wild and woolly Washington pitcher named Joe Krakauskas. After a game at Yankee Stadium, he told Shirley Povich of the Washington Post and me that a frightening thing had happened to him while pitching against Gehrig. Joe had uncorked his high inside fastball with the expectation that Lou would move back and take it as a ball. Instead, Krakowska said Lou, a renowned judge of balls and strikes, moved closer to the plate. My pitch went between his wrists, Joe said, still shaken. Scared the hell out of me. Something's wrong with Gehrig. Lou's salary was cut $3,000 a year before he went south with the Yankees in 1939. There was no beef from him. He had had a bum year for him, so the cut was deserved. He'd come back. After all, the Babe played 22 years without ever taking good care of himself. Joe McCarthy started Gehrig at first base on opening day of the 1939 season, contemptuous of a fan who, a few days before in an exhibition game at Ebbets Field, had bawled in earshot of both of them, "Hey, Lou, why don't you give yourself up? What do you want McCarthy to do? Burn that uniform off you?" Lou hobbled as far into the 1939 season as May 2nd. Then, on the morning of the first game of a series against Detroit, he called McCarthy on the hotel's house phone and asked to see him. "I'm benching myself, Joe," he said, once in the manager's suite. McCarthy did not speak. "For the good of the team," Lou went on, "I can't tell you how grateful I am to you for the kindness you've shown me and your patience. I just can't seem to get going. The time has come for me to quit." McCarthy snorted and told him to forget the consecutive games played record and take a week or two off, and he'd come back strong. Gehrig shook his head. "I can't go on, Joe," he said. "Johnny Murphy told me so." McCarthy cursed the relief pitcher. "I didn't mean to say it that way, Joe," Garrick said. "All the boys have been swell to me. Nobody's said a word that would hurt my feelings, but Johnny said something the other day that made me know it was time for me to get out of the lineup. And all he meant to do was to be encouraging." McCarthy, still angry, asked for details. "You remember the last play in that last game we played at the stadium?" Lou asked. "A ball was hit between the box and first base. Johnny fielded it, and I got back to first just in time to take the throw from him. So, well, I had a hard time getting back there, Joe," Lou said. "I should have been there in plenty of time. I made the put out, but when Johnny and I were trotting to the bench, he said, 'Nice play, Lou.' I knew then it was time to quit. The boys were beginning to feel sorry for me." At the urging of his devoted wife, Eleanor, Lou checked into the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. In due time, he emerged with a bleak, "To whom it may concern" document signed by the eminent Dr. Harold C. Harbian. Quote, "This is to certify that Mr. Lou Gehrig has been under examination at the Mayo Clinic from June 13th to June 19th, 1939, inclusive. After a careful and complete examination, it was found that he is suffering from amyotrophic lateral sclerosis. This type of illness involves the motor pathways and cells of the central nervous system and, in lay terms, is known as a form of
chronic poliomyelitis, infantile paralysis. The nature of this trouble makes it such that Mr. Gehrig will be unable to continue his active participation as a baseball player, inasmuch as it is advisable that he conserve his muscular energy. He could, however, continue in some executive capacity. End quote. Lou returned to the team for the remainder of the 1939 season, slowly suiting up each day, taking McCarthy's lineups to home plate to deliver the umpires before each game. It was his only duty as captain. It was another winning season for the Yankees, but hardly for Lou. A short walk from the dugout to home plate and back exhausted him. But more exhausting was a cruel but mostly true story in the New York Daily News to the effect that some of his teammates had become afraid of drinking out of the Yankee dugout's drinking fountain after Lou used it. Gehrig Appreciation Day, July 4th, 1939, was one of those emotional salutes which only baseball seems to be able to produce. Only baseball seems able to produce. Packed stands, the prospect of a doubleheader win over the Washington Senators, a peppery speech from Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, the presence of Yankee fan Gehrig buff Postmaster General Jim Farley, and the array of rheumatic and fattening old teammates of like yesteryear, and the family, quote, I mean, capital T, capital F, the family in a sidelines box. Presents and trophies filled the table. For Lou, now beginning to hollow out from his disease, one basic ingredient was missing. Babe Ruth wasn't there. Babe, the one he wanted to be there more than he wanted any of his old buddies, had not answered the invitations or the management's phone calls. Then, with little warning, a great commotion and rustle and rattle in the stadium. The babe was entering. He magnetized every eye, activated every tongue. Lou wheezed a prayer of thanksgiving. The ceremony between games of the doubleheader was not calculated to be anything requiring a stiff upper lip. Joe McCarthy's voice cracked as he began his prepared tribute. He promptly abandoned his script and blurted, "Don't let's cry about this," which had just the opposite effect among the fans. When Lou's turn came, he too pocketed the small speech he had worked on the night before. He swallowed a few times to make his voice stronger, then haltingly said, "They say I've had a bad break. But when the office force and the groundkeepers and even the giants from across the river, whom we'd give our right arm to beat in the World Series, when they remember you, that's something. And when you have a wonderful father and mother who worked hard to give you an education and a wonderful wife," his words began to slither when he tried to say something about Jake Rupert and Miller Huggins dead and McCarthy, Barrow and Bill Dickey alive, but nobody missed his ending. "I may have been given a bad break," he concluded, briefly touching his nose as if to discourage a sniff, "but I have an awful lot to live for. With all this, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth." Babe, the irrepressible, stepped forward, embraced him, and blubbered an act that turned out to be epidemic. Gehrig made the trip to Cincinnati that fall to watch his old club clobber the Reds in the in the World Series. He had a good time, but some of his friends found it a troubling experience being around him. Going out to dinner one night with Dickie at his side, Lou staggered and was on the brink of plunging down the long flight of marble steps that led from the lobby to the Netherlands Plaza Hotel to the street level. Dickie made one of the better catches of his life and saved Lou from a possibly fatal fall. Then there was a scene on the train that brought the victorious Yanks back to New York. Lou spotted his friend Henry McLemore of the United Press and invited him to his drawing room for a drink. A table had been set up. Lou slowly but surely put ice in the glasses, then reached for the partly filled fifth of Johnny Walker Black Label. He wrapped a bony hand around the cork and tried to pull it loose. It was not in tightly, but he did not have the strength to loosen it. Henry stopped listening to what Lou was saying about the series. He was mesmerized by Lou's struggle and too reverent of the man to offer help. Finally, Lou raised the bottle to his lips, closed his teeth on the cork, and let his elbows drop to the table. The cork stayed in his teeth. He removed it, poured the drinks, and went on with what he had been saying. Henry got very drunk that night. Just before he died on June 2nd, 1941, Lou called me from his office. Mayor LaGuardia had appointed him to the New York City Parole Board to work with and encourage youthful lawbreakers. Gehrig threw himself into the work with everything he had or had left. He also kept up a lively interest in research into the disease that had driven him out of baseball. It was a note about the latter that prompted his phone call. "I've got some good news for you," he said. "Looks like the boys in the labs might have come up with a real breakthrough. They've got some new serum that they've tried on 10 of us who have the same problem. And you know something? It seems to be working on 9 out of the 10. How about that?" He was elated. I tried not to ask the question, but it came out anyway after a bit. "How about you, Lou?" Lou said, "Well, it didn't work on me, but how about that for an average 9 out of 10? Isn't that great?" I said, "Yes, it was great." So was he. So that was our stories on courage today. And I will talk to you again later. Okay? Old Kinderhook.